My name is Veronica Kowalska, but everyone calls me Vera. I'm 32, a senior aerospace engineer who's spent the last decade building satellites, not social skills. My English is fluent, technical, precise, but my accent always tags along, stubborn as gravity. When I first moved to the US from Krakow, people told me my accent was charming. By year 12, it had turned into a quirk, and when I met Jason Miller, it became a distraction. Jason was everything. I wasn't born here, smooth, well-dressed, effortless, in rooms full of people who care about words like branding and presentation. He worked in marketing at a luxury consulting firm where image is oxygen. We'd been together 2 years, living together for 6 months. Things were good, or at least predictable, until the night of his company's holiday gala. I was putting on lipstick in the mirror when Jason appeared behind me, nodding his tie. He kissed my shoulder, the kind of absent-minded peck you give someone you've already decided belongs to you. Then casually he said it. "Hey babe, one quick thing. At the party, maybe don't talk too much tonight." My lipstick paused mid-stroke. Sorry. He kept fixing his tie eyes on his reflection instead of mine. You know how my colleagues can be. Some of them get really picky about communication. Your accent might be distracting. There it was, that careful marketing word, soft enough to sound reasonable, sharp enough to draw blood. "Distracting," I repeated, voice low. He smiled nervously. "You know what I mean. It's not a big deal. It's just, sometimes people have trouble understanding you. They're old school." I set the lipstick down. And what am I supposed to do? Stay quiet? He chuckled like I'd said something funny. "No, just, let me do most of the talking, okay? You'll still look amazing." At the party, he introduced me as Victoria. Not Vera, not Veronica. Victoria apparently more polished for the high net worth crowd. "Everyone, this is Victoria," he said, sliding an arm around my waist. "She's an aerospace engineer." "Oh, wow," someone said. "That's impressive. What company?" Jason cut in before I could answer. "She works in R&D for a satellite firm. She's the smartest woman I know." I smiled tightly, feeling the word smartest burn like irony. For the next 2 hours, I said maybe 10 words. I nodded when people laughed, raised my glass when they toasted. Jason's colleagues spoke quickly, the kind of quick that signals importance. Every time I thought of joining, Jason's hand found mine under the table, squeeze, smile, silence. On the drive home, the city lights smeared through the windshield like watercolor. Jason hummed softly to the radio. "See, that wasn't so bad. You were perfect tonight." I looked out the window. Perfect. "Yeah, you looked elegant. You didn't even seem nervous." "Right," I said softly. Elegant and quiet. He didn't hear the bitterness, or maybe he did and chose not to. At home, I washed off the makeup layer by layer. Foundation, eyeliner, lipstick, all the things that made me presentable. When my bare face stared back, I whispered to the mirror, "He doesn't want me to talk. Fine. But silence can speak too." The next morning, Jason kissed me goodbye as if nothing had happened. "You're amazing, babe. Everyone thought you were so classy." I smiled faintly. "Did they like Victoria?" He froze for a second, then laughed. "Oh, come on. It's easier for Americans to pronounce. You know how names can be tricky." I tilted my head. "They pronounce Schwarzenegger just fine." He blinked, then walked out, pretending not to understand the jab. The days after that were quiet. I worked late coding orbital calculations while replaying his words in my head. Don't talk too much. It wasn't just about sound. It was about visibility. When I was a little girl, my grandmother used to say, "Silence is for prayer, not punishment." I didn't understand it then. I do now. Jason wanted a version of me that blended in, a quiet accessory that didn't make his perfect image wobble. And I had given him that for one night. But something inside me cracked. Not a loud break, more like glass under heat. Invisible, but spreading. 3 weeks later, Jason told me his firm had another event, a client dinner. "You'll love it this time," he promised, pouring wine into my glass. "Just be yourself. But maybe keep things simple." I smiled. "Simple." He nodded, relieved. "Yeah, friendly, warm, not too technical." "Got it." I lifted the glass, clinked it gently against his. "I'll be exactly what you asked for." That night, as I stood in front of my closet choosing a dress, I felt oddly calm. Not angry, strategic. There's a quiet sort of power in pretending to agree while planning your own rebellion. When Jason called from the hallway, "You ready, Victoria?" I answered. Almost Jason. But in the mirror, I practiced my smile, the one that says everything without a word. Because words apparently were my flaw. And tomorrow night, I'd show him what silence really sounds like. The restaurant was one of those places where the wine list had its own leather-bound book, and everyone lowered their voices to sound more expensive. Jason walked in like he owned the place. I followed half a step behind the perfect polished girlfriend he'd sculpted from my own quiet. His boss, Rebecca Lynn, was already there, early 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Next to her sat 2 senior partners and 3 clients whose smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Everyone, this is my girlfriend, Victoria," Jason said. There it was again, Victoria. I felt it settle over me like a mask. I smiled politely and shook hands. When one of the clients asked, "What do you do?" I turned to Jason, waiting. But this time I didn't let him answer. "Pracuję w inżynierii kosmicznej," I said smoothly, the words rolling in my native polish. The table fell silent. Rebecca blinked. Jason froze mid-laugh. One of the partners leaned in puzzled. "I'm sorry, what was that?" I repeated it slower, clearer still in Polish, then smiled. Jason chuckled nervously. "She's joking. She speaks a lot of languages. Right, babe?" I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Tylko jeden dzisiaj. Only one today." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Is she speaking Polish?" Jason's neck flushed. "Yeah, she's just being funny." The client next to me, a French investor, smiled kindly. "Beautiful language. But what did she say?" Jason's knee bumped mine under the table hard. "English, Vera," he hissed through clenched teeth. "I'm sorry," I said, but in Polish again. "Nie mogę mówić po angielsku dziś wieczorem." "I can't speak English tonight." Rebecca tried to change the subject, bless her. "So Jason, tell me about that new branding pitch." Jason jumped on it like a lifeline, rambling too quickly, his laugh brittle. But I could see it, the panic flickering behind his smile. He couldn't control this version of me. The room had shifted and he knew it. Every time someone looked at me, I nodded, smiled, gestured delicately with my fork, perfectly polite, perfectly incomprehensible. When the waiter asked how I'd like my steak cooked, I pointed at the menu and said, "Dobrze wysmażony, proszę." Well done, please. The waiter blinked but nodded. Rebecca hid a grin behind her glass. Halfway through dinner, one of the clients turned to Jason. "So your girlfriend's from Poland?" "Yeah," he said tightly. "She's an engineer." The client smiled at me. Very impressive. I had a Polish colleague, once smartest guy in the office. Accent so thick we had to listen twice to catch his jokes. I met his eyes and replied softly, "To znaczy, że warto słuchać." That means it's worth listening twice. He chuckled, didn't understand a word, but laughed anyway, charmed by the rhythm. Jason, though, was shaking. By dessert, he'd stopped pretending. His jaw clenched every time I opened my mouth. I caught Rebecca watching me, not with confusion but curiosity, maybe admiration, maybe calculation. When the check came, Jason paid so fast he almost threw the card at the waiter. The car ride home was silent for exactly 3 blocks. Then he exploded. "What the hell was that?" I looked out the window. "You said my accent was distracting." "That's not what I meant." "Oh, because it sounded like you didn't want me speaking English at all." He gripped the steering wheel. "You embarrassed me, Vera." "Did I?" My tone stayed calm. "Or did you embarrass yourself trying to translate a woman you claim to love?" He slammed his palm against the steering wheel. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "This rebellion. It's childish." I turned to face him, voice low. "You asked for silence, Jason. I'm giving it to you in the only language that doesn't apologize for existing." When we got home, he stormed to the bedroom, slamming the door. I sat on the couch, the city light flickering across the walls, and laughed softly at first, then bitterly. It wasn't joy, it was relief. For the first time since I moved into his world of glass smiles and polished lies, I had spoken without needing to be understood. And he couldn't stop me. The next morning, he didn't say a word. Not during breakfast, not when he left for work. Just silence, the kind that feels less like peace and more like punishment. That's when I realized something. Silence wasn't my weakness. It was my mirror. It showed him exactly who he was, a man who couldn't stand not being the loudest voice in the room. And me, I was just getting started. The next invitation came 2 weeks later. Jason walked into the kitchen, holding a sleek ivory envelope like it was a peace offering. "Another company mixer next Friday. It's important this time. Rebecca, the boss, will be there. Think of it as a fresh start, okay?" He looked hopeful, almost pleading. His voice had softened since the silent dinner incident. I took the envelope, turning it over. Embossed lettering, gold foil, pretension. "Do you want me to come as Veronica or Victoria?" I asked. He froze. "Don't do that." "Do what?" He sighed. "Just don't make this another test." "I'm sorry. Okay, I shouldn't have said those things before. Just be yourself. Speak English. Be normal." "Normal," I repeated. "Define normal." Jason smiled, relieved by what he thought was agreement. "You know what I mean. No games. No Polish." I nodded slowly. "Got it." Inside, I was already curious to see what his version of normal looked like when stripped of its polish. The event was at a rooftop bar downtown. Gold lights, glass walls, a skyline that seemed to hum. The kind of place people go not to relax, but to prove they belong. Jason was dazzling, that night-tailored suit champagne laugh, the man who knew everyone's name. And he looked proud, walking beside me, hand on the small of my back, like I was both decoration and victory. "Let's mingle," he said. I smiled. "After you." He guided me toward Rebecca, who stood talking with a group that included a young woman with a pixie cut and a middle-aged man in a silver tie. "Vera, this is Brittany, and this is Mr. Yamamoto visiting from our Tokyo office." Jason's smile widened, practiced and brittle. "Mr. Yamamoto, this is my girlfriend Veronica." Victoria Brittany corrected, lightly grinning. Jason's laugh came out too high. "Oh yeah, right, Victoria." Mr. Yamamoto bowed slightly. I returned the gesture, automatically old habit. He began speaking quickly in Japanese, his tone polite but expectant. Jason froze. Sorry, I don't." He glanced at Brittany, panicked. "Does anyone—" I stepped forward. "Yamamoto-san," I said, bowing again. "Watashi wa koku kogakusha desu." The man's face brightened instantly. "Anata wa nihongo ga hanasemasu ka?" Chotto-dake, I smiled. "Sukoshi jikan nihon no projekuto ni kanyu shimashita." A little. "I worked on a Japanese project for some time." Brittany blinked. "Wait, you speak Japanese?" Jason's hand on my back stiffened. "Some," I said modestly. "I collaborated with their satellite division for 3 years." Rebecca's eyebrow arched, impressed. Mr. Yamamoto continued chatting fluently, comfortably. He asked about contract terms, budget flexibility, the project's timeline. Jason stood there nodding like a malfunctioning robot. I translated softly for Rebecca. "He says they're concerned about currency fluctuation clauses in the merger contract." Rebecca leaned forward. The translator didn't mention that. "He says there's a phrasing issue in the legal document. Adjustment should read allowance, or it implies an obligation." She blinked. "That could cost us millions." I nodded. He noticed it right away. Jason's jaw tightened. How do you even know this stuff?" "Engineering isn't just numbers," I replied gently. "Sometimes it's language." Rebecca gave a small, admiring laugh. "Well, it's certainly saving us a lot of money tonight." For the rest of the evening, I found myself translating back and forth between executives, bridging gaps they hadn't even realized were there. French, Japanese, English, like spinning plates in the air, each one reflecting a different piece of me I'd kept hidden. Jason watched silently, his usual confidence leaking out like air from a punctured tire. At one point, Brittany leaned over to him. "You never told us your girlfriend was multilingual." Jason smiled stiffly. "Yeah, she never told me either." Later, Rebecca approached me privately. "You know, Vera," she said, smiling in that calculating way successful women do, "people who can connect across cultures, those are the ones who really lead. If you ever get tired of aerospace, call me." She slipped me her card. Jason arrived a second too late to pretend it was his idea. On the drive home, the air was thick with unspoken words. Finally, he said, "So, you speak Japanese?" "Yes." "And Polish?" "Yes." "And English, obviously." "And German." "And some Russian." He stared ahead. 5 languages. 6 if you count silence. He exhaled through his nose. "You could have told me. You could have asked." "That's not fair." "Neither is being called Victoria." He gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You made me look stupid tonight." I turned to him calm. "No, Jason. I made myself visible. There's a difference." He didn't respond. When we got home, he went straight to the bedroom, muttering something about exhaustion. I stayed in the kitchen, turning Rebecca's business card over in my hands. The light caught the embossed logo, Linen Associates International Consulting. For the first time, I imagined a world where my accent wasn't something to hide, but a bridge to everything I wanted. Maybe silence wasn't the weapon. Maybe fluency was. It started small. An email here, a forwarded message there. Rebecca had been true to her word. After the Japanese dinner, she began CCing me on project threads for consultation. Jason pretended not to notice, though every click of my laptop seemed to echo louder in our apartment. By the 3rd week, she invited me to assist as an unofficial cultural liaison for their upcoming merger conference. "We could use someone who understands technical translation nuances," she said over the phone. Just a few hours informal. Her tone was deliberate, an offer disguised as a test. Jason overheard. His coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. "She's hiring you?" "Inviting," I said. "Not hiring. Yet." He forced a smile. "Wow. Guess my boss really likes you." I looked up from my laptop. "You sound surprised." He didn't answer. That week, he grew restless, hovering over my shoulder when I worked making jokes that weren't jokes. So now you're part of my office, huh? I should start charging rent for your reputation. The humor cracked at the edges. Then one evening, as I was reviewing translated reports, he snapped. You're doing this on purpose. Doing what? Making me look bad? I shut the laptop gently. I'm making myself visible, Jason. You just don't like how bright that looks next to you. His jaw twitched. Don't twist this. You embarrassed me once, and now you're what, trying to prove something? Yes, I said softly, that I was never the one who needed fixing. The night of the conference, Rebecca's text arrived. Black tie. Arrive early. Bring that confidence from the dinner. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I opened my wardrobe and chose the same emerald dress Jason once said looked too bold for his crowd. When I walked out, his eyes widened. That's what you're wearing. Yes, is there a problem? He hesitated, caught between pride and panic. No, you look fine. Just be professional, okay? Don't overdo the languages. Don't worry, I said, sliding on my earrings. I'll only speak when spoken to. He didn't notice the irony. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and money. Waiters glided like clockwork. Rebecca waved me over with genuine warmth. Vera, you made it. I've been telling everyone about the genius who saved our Japanese deal. Jason's smile tightened. Our Japanese deal, he corrected lightly. Rebecca's glance flicked to him amused, and she didn't answer. Throughout the evening, I moved from group to group, effortlessly switching between English, German, and Russian. It wasn't showing off, it was breathing. Each conversation pulled me further from Jason's orbit. He floated nearby, trying to insert himself, but language is an invisible barrier, one he couldn't cross. At one point, a German executive asked, "Do you often do translation work?" I smiled. No, I build satellites, but languages are orbits too, each with its own gravity. He laughed, delighted. Then you must teach me some Polish before I leave. Across the room, I caught Jason watching me, drink in hand, expression unreadable. Later, Rebecca took the stage for the closing toast. We're entering a new era of international collaboration, she said, voice clear. And sometimes the bridges we need aren't built from business strategy, but from understanding. Then she lifted her glass toward me. To Veronica Kowalska, whose insight reminded us that communication isn't about sounding alike, it's about listening across difference. The room applauded. Cameras flashed. My name, my real name, rang out like a reclamation. Jason's hand clenched around his glass until his knuckles went white. Afterward, as guests drifted out, Rebecca pulled me aside. You have a rare skill, Vera. We'll be launching an international division soon. I'd like you to consult, maybe even lead. I exhaled slowly. That's generous. It's earned, she smiled. I'll be in touch. Jason appeared a beat later. Smile stretched too wide. So great night, huh? You must be thrilled. I am. You were really working the room. I was working. He looked around to make sure no one was near, then hissed, You're enjoying this too much. I stared at him calm and steady, enjoying it, making me look like I'm riding your coattails. I tilted my head. Funny. For months I was invisible at your side. You didn't mind that imbalance. He opened his mouth, closed it, and muttered, This isn't you. I smiled faintly. It's always been me. You just never looked closely. That night back home, I hung the green dress carefully, my mind still humming from applause. Jason stood in the doorway watching me. You think you won tonight, he said quietly. No, Jason, I didn't think it was a competition. He scoffed. It always is. I turned to face him fully. Then maybe you should ask yourself why you're losing to someone who was never trying to play. He didn't reply. When the apartment finally went silent, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. For the first time, I started writing my own proposal, one that didn't need his permission or his shadow. Because behind every curtain he pulled shut, there was still a woman standing. And she'd just learned how bright she could burn when no one was telling her to dim. The morning after the conference, the air in the apartment felt heavier, like something invisible had broken during the night, but neither of us wanted to step on the shards. Jason sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone, jaw tight. I poured coffee in silence, waiting for the explosion. It didn't take long. You humiliated me, he said flatly. I blinked. Good morning to you too. He slammed his phone down. Rebecca offered you a position. My boss offered you a job. Do you have any idea how that makes me look? I sipped my coffee slowly. Maybe like you date intelligent women. Don't be smug. I'm not, I said quietly. I'm tired. He stared at me, disbelief twisting his features. You really think you deserve to stand in that room? You embarrass me in front of every senior executive. You turned my conference into your own debut. I spoke to people, I replied calm. Isn't that what networking is? You spoke their languages. You made it obvious I couldn't keep up. My voice sharpened. That wasn't me, Jason. That was reality finally catching up to your image. He pushed back from the counter and began pacing. You've changed, Vera. You used to be humble. I used to be quiet. Same thing. No, I said. Humility listens. Silence obeys. His eyes flashed. You think you're better than me now? I never thought that, I said softly. But maybe you did. That night, he didn't come home until after midnight. When he did, he smelled of whiskey and resentment. He threw his jacket onto the couch. My colleagues think I'm some kind of idiot now. They're all talking about how impressive you were. You're the story of the week. I looked up from my laptop. Your angry people finally saw me. I'm angry they saw through me. His words hit like static in the air. And in that moment, I realized everything about Jason, every gesture, every smile, every compliment had always been performance. I'd just refused to read the script. He sat down across from me, elbows on knees. His voice cracked slightly. You're ruining me. No, I said. You're revealing yourself. The next day, I came home early and found him on a video call, his mother's face glowing from the laptop screen. She's half European, he was saying, voice lowered, but urgent. You'll like her, Mom. She's sophisticated, not one of those... He saw me in the doorway. The sentence died in his throat. I stared at him, feeling something cold slide through my chest. Not one of those, what, Jason? He closed the laptop slowly. You weren't supposed to hear that. But I did. He stood up, tried to reach for me. You're overreacting. Overreacting. My laugh was hollow. You told your family I'm half European. Did Polish immigrant not fit your narrative? It's just people have prejudices, Vera. My parents are traditional. Then they'll love you, I said. He winced. Don't make this about race. It's not about race, I said, voice shaking. It's about shame. Yours. The argument burned late into the night, sharp words slicing through the apartment until only exhaustion remained. He said I was too sensitive. I said he was too careful. He said he was protecting me. I said he was hiding me. At one point, he shouted, I can't keep defending you when you make yourself sound stupid with that accent. The silence after that sentence was deafening. My heart slowed. My breath steadied. Say that again, I whispered. He hesitated. You heard me. Yes, I said, finally. He ran a hand through his hair, guilt warring with anger. That's not what I meant. People judge. When they hear that accent, they assume you're fresh off the boat. I was trying to protect you. I stared at him. No, Jason. You were protecting yourself. From the embarrassment of being with someone who reminds you you're ordinary. He shook his head. You're twisting everything. No, I said, my voice firm now. I'm untwisting it. By dawn, he was packing a bag. This isn't working, he muttered. Agreed. He paused in the doorway, suitcase in hand. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But at least it'll be my regret spoken in my own accent. He didn't look back. When the door shut, I stood there surrounded by the stillness he left behind. The quiet wasn't heavy anymore. It was honest. I brewed a pot of coffee, sat at my desk, and opened Rebecca's latest email. We're restructuring the division. I'd like you to head our European liaison team. Let's talk Monday. My reflection in the screen didn't look tired anymore. For years, I'd let other people decide what version of me was acceptable. But the truth, my voice, my language, my story, had been waiting under the silence. Jason worshipped image. I learned to love the truth. And the truth doesn't need translation. The following weeks unfolded like a slow unraveling. Jason and I became a headline without ever appearing in the news. Word travels fast in corporate circles, especially the kind that thrives on gossip disguised as networking. Rebecca called me in for a meeting the Monday after he left. Her tone was steady but knowing. Jason's been telling people you tried to upstage him, that you manipulated your way into this job offer. I took a breath. Is that what they're saying? She smiled faintly. That's what he's saying. Everyone else saw exactly what happened. For a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So much for professionalism. Rebecca leaned forward. Vera, don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes men like Jason can't handle being the supporting act in someone else's story, especially when that someone's smarter. Her words hit harder than she probably meant them to. Don't worry about the noise, she continued. We're moving ahead with your promotion. Director of International Relations. Congratulations. I blinked. Director. She nodded, effective immediately. When I got home that night, the apartment felt bigger. The silence had changed again, less absence, more peace. A week later, Jason showed up unannounced. I heard the knock and my stomach sank before I even saw him through the peephole. He looked exhausted, creased suit, unshaven, the perfect image cracking. We need to talk, he said. I opened the door halfway. About what? Rebecca fired me. I frowned. For what reason? He hesitated. They said misconduct, unprofessional behavior. Someone told HR I made discriminatory comments. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? His silence answered for him. He stepped closer, desperation flickering in his eyes. You did this. No, I said, you did. He slammed his palm against the doorframe. You think you're innocent? You started speaking Polish, Japanese, whatever else to make me look small. You sabotaged me. I kept my tone even. I spoke because you told me not to. That's not sabotage, that's freedom. Freedom. He laughed bitterly. You call ruining my career. Freedom. I folded my arms. I call it consequences. 2 days later, HR called to confirm my position. Director. Double my old salary. It felt surreal, like a life I hadn't dared to believe was waiting for me. Rebecca congratulated me in front of the team, her hand firm on my shoulder. Everyone meet Vera Kowalska, the reason our global partnerships now work. The applause felt different from the polite clapping at Jason's parties. This wasn't courtesy, it was respect. For the first time, my accent didn't sound like a flaw, it sounded like a signature. Jason didn't stay quiet for long. He began sending long, angry texts. You stole everything I built. Rebecca only promoted you to spite me. I gave you this world, Vera. I ignored them until the last one came through late at night. You owe me. I replied simply. For what? The silence, you already got that. No response after that, just absence. 3 weeks into the new job, Rebecca asked if I'd present at a multicultural leadership summit. You're the embodiment of our values, she said. Adaptation without assimilation. Those words stayed with me. Adaptation without assimilation. At the event, I stood before a crowd of executives, students, and translators. Behind me, the projector displayed the title slide, The Power of an Accent. Communication Beyond Perfection. I spoke in English, clear, firm, accented, and for the first time I didn't try to smooth the edges. I let the vowels stretch the consonants roll. I let it sound exactly like me. The audience was silent until the end, then the applause rose wave after wave. Afterward, as I walked out into the evening air, I saw a familiar figure near the sidewalk, Jason. He was thinner now, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. You look different, he said. I feel different, I replied. He gave a broken laugh. You won. This wasn't a game. He nodded slowly. Rebecca told HR everything. About the accent comments, the name thing, the Victoria stuff. They had recordings. I tilted my head. Recordings. He looked away. Someone must have reported me. Probably Brittany. She always hated me. I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him that I had recorded the dinner where he'd hissed, "Don't speak English tonight." Some things didn't need translation either. He exhaled shakily. You destroyed my career, Vera. I met his eyes. No, I stopped letting you narrate mine. He swallowed, voice softening. You're not even angry, are you? No, I said. Anger needs caring. I ran out of that. For a moment, we stood there, two people who had finally said everything. Then I stepped past him, the sound of my heels steady against the pavement. Behind me, he said quietly, you'll regret this someday. I didn't turn around. Maybe, but at least I'll regret it in my own language. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, looking out over the city. The skyline shimmered, the same city that once made me feel invisible. Now it hummed with possibility. People still asked where my accent came from. I used to flinch at that question. Now I smiled. From everywhere, I refused to forget. Because Jason was wrong. Silence wasn't peace, it was punishment. And my voice, imperfect and unpolished, had built a bridge no image ever could. 3 months later, I found myself back at the same cafe where Jason once told me my English sounded a little off. I used to avoid the place, too many ghosts clinging to the polished tabletops, but now the smell of coffee and conversation felt mine again. I sat near the window, reading a Polish newspaper my cousin still mailed from Krakow. People stared, occasionally curious about the foreign print, the sound of unfamiliar vowels when I murmured a translation to myself. I didn't care. I had earned this noise. Vera. The voice was tentative, familiar, and older somehow. I looked up. Jason stood there holding a paper cup. His hair was longer, suit gone, replaced by a wrinkled button-down and weariness. The sparkle, the branding polish was gone. Jason, can I sit? I nodded. You already have. He sat across from me, the chair scraping softly against the floor. Silence stretched between us, awkward and human. Finally, he said, I've been in therapy. I raised an eyebrow. Congratulations. I'm not expecting forgiveness, he said quickly. I needed to tell you something. He looked down, hands clasped. My dad was an immigrant, from Hungary. Changed his last name when he came here. Spent his whole life trying to sound like everyone else. I used to watch him practice his English at night, whispering words until they stopped sounding foreign. His voice cracked. He told me once that an accent makes people think you don't belong. I guess I believed him. I didn't speak. Jason met my eyes. When I heard you speak Polish, it felt like everything he tried to bury was suddenly alive again. It scared me. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth. I nodded slowly. Inherited shame, I said. It sticks like dust. Yeah, he smiled faintly. Therapy called it internalized xenophobia. Sounds ugly, right? It is. He chuckled softly. I deserve that. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small card. I'm working at a translation startup now. Entry level. My boss is from Colombia. She has an accent thicker than yours. She's brilliant. I'm glad I said. He hesitated, then continued. I'm learning Hungarian again, trying to remember what my dad forgot. Something inside me softened, not forgiveness, but release. Good. Every language you keep alive is a rebellion against silence. He looked at me, eyes damp. You were never embarrassing, Vera. You were brave. I smiled faintly. Took you long enough to learn that word. He stood, placing the card gently on the table. Thank you for the wake-up call. Don't thank me, I said. Just stop running from your own sound. He nodded, then walked out, disappearing into the rain-washed street. I looked down at the business card Jason Miller, translation associate. Underneath, in small, italic letters, learning Hungarian. That evening, I taught at my Saturday Polish class at the community center. The students were a mix of adults and teenagers, immigrants, children of immigrants, people who wanted to find the parts of themselves the world told them to lose. After class, a teenage girl lingered by the door. Ms. Vera, she said shyly. My dad says my Polish accent makes my English sound weird. He says I should stop speaking it. I knelt slightly so our eyes met. And what do you think? She shrugged. I think it makes me different. I smiled. Then keep both. It's not a flaw. It's proof you can speak more than one truth. Her grin lit the room. Thanks. She ran off, ponytail bouncing, leaving me standing in the faint smell of chalk and hope. Later that night, as I locked the classroom door, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. A woman who once apologized for her own vowels now stood tall, shoulders straight, voice unhidden. I whispered softly in Polish. Mój accent to moja historia. My accent is my story. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was translating myself for the world. I was simply speaking. When I got home, an email notification flashed across my phone. Subject: Global Diversity Summit. Keynote invitation. We'd be honored if you would share your journey at our upcoming conference, The Strength in Difference. I smiled. Somewhere in another office, Rebecca was still fighting her quiet battles, and I knew this, she'd won hers too. I typed a quick reply. I'll be there, and I'll speak in my own voice. Send. That night, as rain tapped against the window, I read the newspaper headline aloud in Polish, then in English. My words carried through the apartment warm, alive, imperfect. Every rolled R and misplaced article, every trace of another country, another home, it all belonged. Because my accent wasn't